GM, everyone. GM. GM. All right. Yeah. Thank you for everyone coming here. It's going to be a very nice presentation. I feel very good, and hope you all as well. Today we're going to talk about social media and Web3. And there's some background story on this narrative. I think some of you all know that Aave has been building decentralized finance, more or less, financial protocols. But the thing is that Web3 is more about than finance. And at Aave, we always see ourselves kind of like a Web3 builders than only like finance builders. And one of the challenges we wanted to take upon is to build and contribute into social media in Web3. Because essentially, Web3 is not just only about, and blockchain is not only about storing financial value, it's also storing moments. For example, everyone that is claiming POAP for attending this conference, that is a moment, that's value for you and for the community. Any social interaction can be value, and all these interactions and values and relationships can be captured on-chain. Yeah. The reason why I would say that it's right time for try to actually build decentralized social media or more or less social graph is because I think we are reached in a state where we have seen that decentralization and community-owned value networks have proven to be very impactful in the sense that now decentralized finance has been peaking at 100 billion value locked in such a short period of time. So if you go 2 years back in time, some of these protocols, early protocols, had 5 to 30 million worth of value, and the growth has been exponential. And everything has been built on a network that is very secure, and we're talking about Ethereum here. And there's still kind of like a cost associated to this security, and we still have a lot of consumption and usage and adoption at the moment. But still, we're a small community, and now that decentralized finance as a financial system has proven to work, there's a lot of things you can build in DeFi. I'm not saying that you should stop working on your project. What I'm saying is that there's more opportunities beyond DeFi, and essentially DeFi, social media, NFTs, and everything that is built on the same network are composable. So you just like open new opportunities. And when it comes to actually value networks and community-owned networks, when we look at social media today, we see that many of the platforms are owned by big corporates, and these corporates are pretty much dictating how the platforms should evolve based on their strategies, their goals, their culture, and also the mechanisms of creating value to the shareholders. So pretty much how the system looks these days is this. So when you are using Facebook, you're using Twitter, any kind of social media that has some sort of advertising component there, what you're essentially doing is you're providing your data to that platform, and essentially that platform is using your data and collecting the data with different kinds of algorithms and ensuring that they know exactly what you want, and then using advertisers to sell products back to you. So essentially, you are the one who is creating all of the content into these Web2 social networks, and you are consuming those products that are sold to you based on the data you provide. And essentially, when you post content into social media, you are actually giving out your content. The moment you tweet, the moment you post a picture in Instagram, in that particular moment, you are actually giving the ownership and the value from you to the social network. And it's fine, because essentially they provide you a service. They provide you a service to grow your audience. They provide you user experience and a way to connect you with your friends. The thing is also, when you don't like the social media, but you have grown your audience, you usually can't take that audience elsewhere. So your audience isn't portable in that way. And good example today, posting content is memes. So for example, you see a lot of NFTs are, a lot of memes are tokenized as NFTs and retroactively sold. For example, we had the Nyan Cat meme, the Dodge meme, and all of these memes have been created years ago. And then later, the creators of these memes pretty much monetize them by selling that meme, the actual content as an NFT. Now, this is interesting, kind of like a movement, because it shows that actually the content itself and signature from that creator has value. But in the current way how social media is built, you cannot capture that value as a creator. You can propagate some audience in any social media, but essentially you're not able to monetize that content. And once you create that content within the social medias, you pretty much look into that format. So for example, if you're tweeting and you're creating narrative there, you create a profile for yourself, and when you can't port that profile, you basically are a bit of stuck in that particular social media. And we see in kind of like from years to years, different social media networks have different kinds of audiences, of course, but also they tend to capture more value depending on where a lot of narrative is happening. And I'm sure that many of the audience are using Twitter, and especially crypto Twitter, and kind of like building different kind of narrative in form of your community elsewhere will be very difficult, because everything is locked into that platform, and you are kind of like forced to bring your content into Twitter and publish it there, and there isn't kind of like a competitive mechanism where, you know, someone else could create a more better user experience, more humane user experience, for example, where maybe some things like health is taken into consideration, mental health, where, you know, you shouldn't spend that much of a time in social media. And all of this kind of like a variations on the front end level is very difficult to build today, because if you have a developer here that comes from another part of the world and wants to build a better user experience in social media and a better application, that's very difficult to do at the moment, because you're stuck into a network, and it's very difficult to port audience. And of course, as you contribute more data to these social medias, you actually don't know what's happening with the data, because you are contributing everything into databases, and you don't know how those databases are controlled, but also there's lack of competition in terms of how your data is used. And what we learned from DeFi is that, you know, transparency is amazing concept, because you see what's happening in the markets, you see what kind of interactions are happening, you see the human behavior, the financial behavior, which is amazing for open markets. And this openness has a lot of value, but also at the same time, you can build privacy on top of the open systems. And at the same time, when you have a base layer, a common social graph, the next thing what you can actually build is ways to store more private data, but also compete on that level. You can build applications that are actually competing the way they handle your data and what data they collect. If you have two different choices, you have one application and the other application, and the other application that actually provides you the same accessibility and features, the same open social graph that takes less data from you, you can choose that provider. So it's more about like decentralization on the kind of like a long run, and building open protocols is about giving choices to the users, that you can choose privacy, you can choose to give more data, because maybe you get value from that data, back to yourself, or you can choose basically features and platforms that are giving services and respecting your usage and your values. For example, if you value more health, maybe you need a application that creates your accessibility to the open social graph in a way that, for example, limits the amount of time you can spend or reminds you how much time you're spending on social media and doesn't actually want to get you into this vacuum of spending your time there and training algorithms for these platforms. And of course, like there's data breaches. If recently we had the 1.5 billion users breach on Facebook, and there's nothing you can do as a Facebook user. You can leave Facebook, but if all of your friends are there, it doesn't make a big difference. And I think what you can do with Web3, you can actually rethink completely how social media could work today. Because essentially what you're doing is you're taking some parts of the social media and making it as a public good. So you're taking the social graph underneath, the relationships, the ability to grow your audience, the ability to post in a permissionless fashion, censorship-resistant fashion, at a protocol level to a wider audience. And this way, you make that part as a public good, and you can create networks, you can create user-specific networks within that system. And that way, it opens up the system to anyone, to any developer, any part of the world, to create applications, create better user experience, compete on content moderation, compete on building better user experience, more humane user experience, and just building very good social media experience where you can share content with your friends. And I think the social media itself as like a concept and networking and a tool to connect with your peers isn't even in a state where it's defined well. Like, who decides that you have to have like your goal is to have 5 million followers, or like basically get as many followers as possible in your network? Like, these kind of things aren't like decided yet. And I think what open social graph allows you to do is actually create more value into smaller networks. Maybe a network of 10, 50, 100 followers and relationships is more valuable to you than a network of thousands of followers for you. And depending on what kind of content you are broadcasting to your audience and what kind of information you're sharing. And essentially, it's about bringing the power to the users. So the concept that we've seen in decentralized finance is that we build protocols that are financial protocols, and we give these protocols the ownership to the users. The users decide how the protocol is evolved in the future, decide kind of like what risk parameters the protocols might have, what kind of assets these protocols have, how they work essentially, and how they're governed, and how the culture will be formed. And in terms of social media, these kind of patterns could be replicated as well, the same way, but going even further in the sense that not only you're part of a bigger community in terms of governing a social media protocol, but also you are governing yourself, your own community, and at the same time you can get your community and your following audience to help to govern elements that you might want to have follower participation. And I guess one of the things which I think is more of a side thing on the whole transformation is that it changes the way you actually own content and monetize content. I would say the ownership of the content is very valuable in the sense that you can actually collect memories, collect certain kind of discussions, certain kind of publishings. It can be images, text, whatever is the content. It can be voice. It can be my DJ gig last night at Mempool. That's a memory, for example. And that content is collectible as well. In the same way, we are now getting the power of NFTs and being able to collect memories, collect images from creators we like, and be part of those communities. And essentially, this behavior actually allows us to open doors for new kind of monetization for those who want to actually monetize as a user with, from their community and together with their community. And monetization means that it brings flexibility on a protocol level, how you can actually monetize the content as your followers can collect your content, they can amplify your content to other audiences, and at the same time, taking back to that meme example where you don't have to go kind of like 10 years after and retroactively, sell an NFT of a content you created back in time and getting that monetization. Maybe this opens a possibility where you can create content that maybe your peers value, and essentially later larger audience will value that, and that content has been traded in between and then becomes a iconic piece of content in the future that could be governed by a community. So NFTs, I think they play a big role because content is unique, and NFTs is something that you can use to actually then capture that content and ensure that it's stored over the years. And of course, curation is interesting. Like, why we have to always kind of like curate ourselves. I know I'm not the best curator when it comes to anything. Music. I know there's better music curators. News. There's better news curators than me. There are different kind of perspectives, and being able to actually curate things, not just collections of what you collect, but also feeds, news, any content, and being able to consume that curation is something that we still haven't empowered till today. And of course, the composability. Everyone here knows money Legos and the power of composability in DeFi. There's one protocol, there's another protocol, someone builds some sort of yield aggregator, and I've seen DeFi. There's like even 7 layers of different composability. Well, wait when you see social media composability and social media Legos, when there's baseline protocol where you can build on top different kinds of modules, different kinds of content moderation protocols on top, where you have different kind of logics and any kind of alterations of that. And I think building something like social media is for us not actually especially for Aave, we're not trying to solve the whole social media aspect. We want to build one simple way to broadcast relationships and distribute content, and then let all the community members to figure out how they could use this protocol and actually build on top more and solve the rest of the parts of the social media. And freedom. So essentially, when you have community-owned protocols, when you have ability to use things permissionless fashion, you have freedom. Freedom comes with responsibility. I guess responsibility comes in the front-end levels where you can build front-ends that are using some sort of moderation tools. It can be also a protocol that actually handles moderation. It can be user-based moderation where users are getting rewarded for handling moderation as well. But freedom essentially means that all these public goods are actually accessible to you and without restriction. And of course, as a community, this pretty much means that when you have followers and you have the relationships, they can help you to make decisions. They can help you to govern things. And in a bigger community, you can decide how things should be changed in the protocol in the future. So instead of corporates deciding things, it's you as users deciding how the network will look like. Our goal is simply to build something very simple, something that gives the users ownership, empowers them, and has such enormous amount of composability that allows you all to figure out everything that social media needs in a very decentralized, community-owned, community-empowered fashion. And it comes relatively soon, and we're super excited about this project. This is something we have never done before. We've been focused on DeFi mostly, so it's been very challenging for us, but also at the same time, very exciting for Aave. And there was a lot of NFTs in the presentation, and my team, Nicola, Kieran, managed to actually give credit to everyone who owns the NFTs, and they're actually owned by these addresses. So whoever is owning them, give all credit to you. So don't sue me later. And thank you all.